Hello, everyone. This week, what I want to talk about is a continuation of where I began last week, where I'm doing 3D printing to take a actuator that is meant to be used inside and be able to use it outside. Now, the 3D print I'm going to use is using PLA, which doesn't hold up well under UV light. However, first of all, I'm going to paint it. But secondly, because of where it's going to be located, behind the solar panels, it is not going to get as much sun on it as it would anywhere else, right? It's always going to be in the shade. So the PLA should be sufficient to give it kind of an umbrella type thing. The only thing I have to worry about here is getting water in the motor. The motor can take splashes of water. That's what it's rated for. But by putting this over it, it'll protect it should we get a snowfall. Which, again, because of where it's located, even in the wintertime, when the panels are just about flat, it shouldn't really get any direct snow on it, but just to be on the safe side, I'm putting this in place for it. So I rendered it in Blender. And the thing I realized is, even using Solidify, my walls were not coming out thick enough. So I have to use an extrusion on that. Now, when you extrude the side walls, what's going to be the top now has to be made bigger. That entire piece needs to be bigger so that it covers the extruded areas of the sidewalls. The other thing to keep in mind when you're printing is the way the object is going to be used is not the way you're going to print it. And the reason for that is printing starts at the bottom and works its way up. So if you think about what's going to happen here, it's going to print all the sidewalls. That's great. But then it's going to print the top, and there's no support there for the top. So while it's printing the top could, in theory, sag a little bit while it's being printed because there's nothing to hold it up. So by inverting it, making the top the bottom, you don't have the same issues that you would have otherwise, because what you've done is take the object and now all it's going to have to do is do the sidewalls. So the bottom is very flat and easy to use. But while I was working on this project, one of the things that I did notice is I wanted to make some small objects, and I don't have a color printer. So one option for me, especially if I'm going to make something like a toy, is to hand paint the toy. So I got out a airbrush and got some new airbrush paints and some new regular paints and some new brushes, and where am I going to put them all, right? There is a object that you can buy. Well, you don't have to buy it. There's an object that you can get called Gridfinity. Gridfinity is basically a grid, a printed grid that locks into other items. So you can buy a bin that has these little feet on it that are 42 millimeters wide. And by dropping that into the grid, it locks into place in the grid. So you can put all these little pieces together and lock them together so that they've been made into an organizer that you can then store your paints, you can store your brushes, you can store your tools. People use them for all kinds of different things, including workshop tools. They have a wall-mounted variety of it, and it's a pretty straightforward object that you're creating. They do take a little while to print, depending on what you're printing, but again, you get your bins and things like that. So from a, let's say, solar perspective, right, if you make your own cables, then you know that those connectors at the end, you've got your male and female connectors, and you've got your male and female metal bits that go inside, and you could create a place to put all of this stuff so that you never have to worry about losing it or something being unable to find it. In my case, I needed to use it for the paints and things. For my solar stuff, I have a roll-up tool bag that I put everything in. But again, I could print small custom boxes that I could put the little metal bits in, so I don't have to worry about them falling out of a plastic bag, for example. So there's a lot of things you can print once you've found something to, found these things online that you can print. Most of them are free. It's an open source area that has a whole bunch of things that contributors have just added to over the years. So you're probably going to find something in there that will handle what you want without having to custom design it, and most likely it's going to be free. But having the 3D printer, it's an Ender V3, and it's been doing a really good job. As I said, you've got to pay attention to how the base is going to move. Now, printers have different ways of handling movement. Some, the beds go up and down. In this case, the bed goes forward and back, and the print head goes up and down. On the ones that the beds go up and down, obviously the print head has to be able to move over the full XY. There's also 3D printers that are enclosed. Depending on what you're using, you may want an enclosed one. Some of them are heated enclosures, which makes it easier to work with certain materials. And there are certain scents or gases given off by some of these materials, these filaments that you're working with, that you having an enclosure, it takes care of that. So I've got an open one. I'm using PLA. It has a bit of an odor to it, but it's nothing extraordinary. There's nothing that's really that bad with it. It's just a minor plastic odor. So if you're going to get an open bed 3D printer, make sure of what you're going to use on it, and make sure that it's not going to have an impact on your health because you're using something that is putting off some gases, some residual material as it heats that would make you sick. So keep that in mind when you're looking at printers. I know now is a great time to be looking at 3D printers because of the prices that are out there right now. But bear in mind that not all printers are made for beginners. Now that I've got some experience with this one, there are other printers that I would consider. Same manufacturer, but they make ones that have a lot of different... it allows you to use more spools of filament at the same time. And it switches them automatically for you, so you don't have to worry about switching colors. If I wanted to switch colors on mine, I would have to take out, the printer would have to stop. I would have to swap out the color that I was using with the new color, which means hand threading it into the machine. Let the machine start up again. Then when the color needs to change again, you have to do it again. These other printers, Bambu has one that mounts at the top. Creality, I'll get it right one of these times, has ones that can mount on the top, but also mount on the side. You can get a 16-color Creality that could handle all 16 colors at the same time. And it does all the swapping and things for you. It's an enclosed unit, and the 4 sets of 4 each mount on either side of the unit itself. But what that allows you to do is there's a way to paint using these printers. So it's not the same as just swapping the colors out, but it's allowing the colors to blend a little bit. So you're starting off with 16 colors, but you know there's a lot you can get with 16 colors. So this Hue program that they have allows you to design to take your image that you've got and design it in such a way so that the light hitting it will reflect back the colors that you want it to be. Now, lithography is the reverse of that. Lithography would require you to have a light behind it, and it's basically reversing that process. The light's pushing out, so the colors have to work in such a way that you get the blended colors coming toward you from the light. In this case, we're bouncing the light off of it, so the reflected colors work the other way, if you will. So that's another option you have, depending on what you want to do. If you're just getting a 3D printer to do tools and things like that, you're probably going to get away with anything that just has a single spool to it. Load it up, print it out, make sure your infill is high so that you're getting good, strong tools out of it, and make sure you've got the right material to make those tools. PLA is great for a lot of things, but it is shatterable. I haven't had any issues with it so far for the things that I've done. Like I said, the organizers of PLA, what's going to happen to those? They're just going to sit. They're not going to be subjected to anything. The one that I'm going to use outside on the actuator, I'll let you know how it goes. I haven't got it built yet to my satisfaction, and I still have to get the actuators attached, which is not going to happen until spring. So they'll go through an entire summer of being outside, being exposed to rain and heat, and we'll see how they hold up over the summer. That'll give me a basis for going into the winter. The reason I went with PLA is PLA has a good rating for cold weather. So it should hold up a little better in the cold. I could be wrong on that. We will find out. But it needs to be something that's rigid, but at the same time is not going to shatter in the cold. So that's what I got for you this week. Again, the issue that I had with Blender is just the fact that by doing Solidify and making that number larger, thinking that it would make my walls a little thicker, it looked great on the render, but it didn't work on the print. It actually gave me a double wall, because what came out of Blender wasn't the fact that it had a thick wall. It came out that there was an outer wall, an inner wall, and a top piece to it. So that's what Blender would have, or that's what the render from Blender would have given me in the STL file, is that kind of thing. And that's not what I was looking for. I was actually looking to thicken up the walls a little bit, because as you get taller, right, you've got this hot material around. It doesn't have any supports on it. You're just going around and around and around with it. It can bow a little bit because of the heat. By making the walls thicker, that gives it its own little bit of support to it, and that makes it less likely to bow. But to get there, you have to use Extrude in Blender. So that's what I got for you guys this week, and I will talk to you all next week.